Well, hello everyone. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation with you all. Thank you for your time, and I really hope the next minutes will have a positive impact in your life. A big thank you to the organizers for bringing us together virtually. My name is Helder, and I'm married to Anna, and we have 4 children. Yes, you heard me correctly. Well, we had Matteo and Raffaello, and we hope to have a girl. Valentina did come, but she brought a brother, Pietro, with her. They are twins. Actually, they recorded this greeting especially for you today.
Hola! Hola! How are you guys?
And how are you? As they ask. Really, how are you? We have different stories, and of course, we are navigating through this pandemic, experiencing a variety of emotions. We may be frustrated, afraid, sad, irritated, hungry, anxious. I was talking to someone this weekend who told me, I'm tired of this pandemic. Anyone else feeling like that? Also, I would guess all of us have felt or are feeling some level of loneliness or isolation during this time of pandemic. Do you agree? I was reading this article in El País, one of the main Spanish newspapers, and the headline says, loneliness in a time of pandemic. Why do we feel this way? Well, you and I know that we humans are social beings and we long for closeness and connection, don't we? Not social distancing, especially with the people we love. I was putting Valentina, my daughter, to bed a few days ago. And as we were giving each other a good night hug, she suddenly said, Papa, te amo. Daddy, I love you. She's only 3 years old, but she longs for closeness. And please listen to this. She already feels that love is vital or essential in life. Giving love and receiving love is fundamental to all of us, is it not? Have you heard the song The Shape of You? Let me sing it to you. I'm just kidding. I won't do that to you. The song is by Ed Sheeran, who, by the way, could not join us but sends his greetings to everyone. It is the most streamed song in Spotify's history. The song mentions love several times, and it's not surprising. So much of humanity's art, in literature, painting, theater, series centers around love, right? Think of the crazy things you've done for love, or crazy things that others have done to you for love. Maybe towards a guy or a girl you've been attracted to, maybe a girlfriend or a boyfriend, maybe parents, sisters, brothers, or a friend. We know that there are various expressions of love, not only romantic love. And though it's hard to define it because the most important things in life cannot be defined, love is more than a feeling, as Erich Fromm, an influential German Jew atheist psychiatrist, wrote. Love is the active concern for the life and the growth of that which we love. And let's be honest, so much of what we do, even unconsciously, we do it for love. Maybe it's not only the diploma we really want. We may want the diploma to make us feel more important, appreciated, loved by others. Maybe it's not only about sharing that picture on Instagram. We may want the likes that make us feel loved. Maybe it's not only the fun, the sex, or the popularity. Our deeper longing is love. However, but though we all long and live for love, it's not surprising to you and to me that there is so much lack of love or absence of love around us and in the whole world. Don't you find it shocking? On one hand, as we've just seen, we humans find love essential and we crave for it. But on the other hand, we sense a lack of it in our friendships, families, and societies, don't we? I find it to be a tension, a gap, a divide so many of us experience. Are you still with me? Are you awake? Good, good. I acknowledge that so often I fail to love my wife, children, friends, and other people the way I should. Maybe you feel the same. After speaking at a conference, I remember having this conversation with a teenage girl who was in the audience and told some of us that she was cutting her wrists and arms and had been thinking of committing suicide. She was struggling to give love and to feel loved. 20,000 people die of hunger every day, while we have enough food for the whole world. There are around 40 million slaves in our world today, more than ever. And human trafficking, which, by the way, is hugely affected by the pornography industry, is one of the crimes growing the most in the world. We could go on thinking of examples such as racism, inequalities, wars, climate change, violence, but this is to highlight the tension I was referring to. That is, we are all seeking love, yet there is such a lack of love in the world today. Therefore, my friends, I would like to spend the remaining minutes of my talk trying to release this tension or to diminish this gap. As you know, the organizers have asked me to talk about love in the time of a pandemic, which is a creative play on the title of the book El amor en los tiempos de cólera, translated as Love in a Time of Cholera, by the Colombian writer and Nobel Prize winner Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I won't say he sends his greetings as he is no longer alive. I want to applaud the organizer's choice for our conversation, as you and I know that one of the many realities that this pandemic has highlighted is how much we want and need love, yet how much lack of love we see in and around us. As I said before, I think it's a tension or a gap. And as I said, I would like to humbly contribute in reducing this gap. Therefore, I want to focus the rest of my address bringing before you some of the teachings on love from the most influential love revolutionary in history. By personal experience, I want to affirm that his ethic of love can help us today in this time of pandemic and whatever the future holds for us. It can surely be argued that no one has had a greater impact on world history in the last 2 millennia because of his love ethics, which is captured in both his teachings and in his life. I'm talking about Jesus, also known as Jesus Christ, who lived in the Middle East 2,000 years ago. Now, I can imagine that maybe some of you are feeling uncomfortable because I've mentioned Jesus. I don't know what your beliefs, views, or background is, though I can say once again, I'm grateful we have the opportunity to be together and dialogue about such important matters. What I do know is that our popular culture is filled with preconceptions and misunderstandings about Jesus. We all hate when others have opinions about us without knowing us or talking to us, don't we? I don't think there is a more misunderstood person in history than Jesus. Now, I don't have time to consider all the prejudices, including those common in our universities, and I need to focus on Jesus' love ethic in this address. So please allow me to summarize it, okay? And hopefully generate curiosity and interest so that you may continue to explore Jesus' ethic of love and how he can definitely help us today in this time of pandemic and whatever the future holds for us. I'm sorry I cannot share some good Spanish wine in a coffee mug with you. Just kidding. But for now, let me give you two reasons why I consider we all can benefit from Jesus' view on love. Are you still with me? Good. Hope so. The first reason why I think Jesus' love ethics is relevant to us today is the historical evidence of its impact. In other words, history shows that Jesus' view on love has brought tremendous benefits to humanity, and it deserves our serious consideration. Jürgen Habermas, one of the most prominent philosophers of our days, wrote, "Egalitarian universalism, meaning that all people are equal in value, from which spring the ideas of freedom and social solidarity, of an autonomous conduct of life and emancipation of the individual morality of conscience, human rights, and democracy, is the direct heir of the Judaic ethic of justice and the Christian ethic of love." Habermas, by the way, describes himself as a methodological atheist. The hospitals, the universities, democracy, abolition of slavery, or the largest humanitarian NGOs, for example, were established by people who followed the movement of Jesus. These massive contributions to humanity are a direct influence of Jesus' love ethic, and its enormous influence in millions upon millions upon millions of people. The sociologist and historian Rodney Stark argues that one of the main reasons why the number of followers of Jesus grew so much in the first century in Rome was because of the mercy Christians displayed toward people who suffered, and in particular, how Christians showed mercy during two pandemics that desolated the Roman Empire. While so many left Rome to run away from the plagues, many Christians stayed to look after the sick, and numerous lives were saved as a result. The second reason why I think Jesus' teaching on love is so relevant to us today, and definitely can help us to diminish the gap between our longing for love and our experience of lack of love, is because his view on love is the most expanded view on love we will ever find. By expanded, I mean comprehensive, holistic, complete, full, and therefore existentially satisfying. In comparison to other popular views, Jesus holds a much more expanded or complete approach to love. Now, let me show you why I say this. Because of our time, allow me to highlight only 3 of Jesus' key teachings on love that demonstrate how expanded his approach is and how they are relevant to us today. I will highlight these 3 teachings mainly from one of Jesus' most well-known words recorded by several of his biographers. First, according to Jesus, please listen, love is real. Love is what? Real. Luke, who was a doctor and a historian of the first century, one of Jesus' biographers, narrates an episode when someone asks Jesus, what is the most important thing in life? In other words, what is the greatest commandment? Dr. Luke quotes Jesus answering the following: love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, it may sound obvious to affirm that love is real. Of course, you may say, I love my girlfriend or boyfriend, I love my parents, my best friend, I love Star Wars. Well, maybe you don't want to confess that. But I want to show you that Jesus' view on love agrees with reality. It echoes what we feel deep inside, what we long for, and what we dream with. Let me show you a painting from Jordan Castile. She's a young American painter. This is called Yvonne and James, and they are real people she painted in New York who have been married for many years. Let me see if you can appreciate it properly. Particularly, look at their hands. What does this painting evoke in you? Love is real. Please, with all respect, okay, let me contrast Jesus' view on love with two very common ways of looking at reality: atheism and pantheism. As we know, atheism affirms that nothing is God. All is matter or energy. Life is the product of chance, and there is nothing but the natural world. As the well-known atheist Richard Dawkins has expressed, the universe we observe has no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. DNA, Dawkins says, neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. Bertrand Russell wrote, "People's origin, loves, and beliefs," and I quote, "are but the outcome of accidental collocations of atoms." And therefore, Russell thinks, we build our lives on the firm foundation of despair. I have to say, I admire these men for their honesty. They are consistent with their atheistic view. I think it's no surprise that atheist regimes have created very violent nations in the last century. As Professor Art Lindsley observes, atheism leads inevitably to a grim and meaningless universe. It encourages autonomy rather than love. It does not lead to love, but to indifference. It is not to say atheists are not loving, but it is not a consequence of the atheist view. Has anyone watched the movie A Beautiful Mind? Yeah, it portrays the extraordinary life of John Nash. Now, there is a scene in a bar when Nash approaches his future wife for the first time. The first thing he says to her is, I don't exactly know what I am required to say in order for you to have intercourse with me. But could we assume that I said all that? I mean, essentially, we are talking about fluid exchange, right? So could we go just straight to sex? Does it shock you? Why? Because we know that love is much more than a biochemical reaction. It is real, it is meaningful, and it is vital, as Jesus expresses. That's why when Levir, my father-in-law, was dying of cancer in a hospital bed, he wanted to mostly talk about what he loved. That's why when I was diagnosed with cancer at 27 years of age, 2 years ago, I'm joking, actually 11 years ago, I wanted to be with the people I loved most. The second common way of looking at reality is what can be broadly described as pantheism. It includes a New Age spirituality drawing from Eastern religions. If for atheism, nothing is God, for pantheism, all is divine and all is one. We are all one. And as New Age author George Leonard writes, we should set aside the Western myth of the separate species. Now, the logical consequence of this is that there is no other to be loved. Well, according to the teachings of the Hindu philosopher Shankara, there seems to be no basis for truly valuing human dignity or actively loving others. He says, who are you? Who am I? Whence have I come? Who is my mother? Who is my father? Think of all this as having no substance, he says. Leave it all as the stuff of dreams. Well, Professor Art Lindsley has said, what if we believe love is important, but our worldview has no basis for love? Then we have to either question our view of the world or question the importance of love. As I've just expressed, Jesus has an expanded or comprehensive view of love. First of all, because he acknowledges love is real. Secondly, are you with me? Are you hungry already? Good, let's keep going. Secondly, love is radical. This is the second teaching of Jesus I would like to highlight that demonstrates how expanded Jesus' approach to love is. According to Jesus, love is radical. I mean radical in the positive sense, meaning it goes beyond. Notice that Jesus said in the quote I've just shown you earlier, love your neighbor as yourself. And also, in a speech Jesus gave on a mountain, and which has become the most influential and revolutionary address in history, Jesus said the following: love your enemies. Let me get this here. Good. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Do we sense how radical Jesus' teaching on love is? He seems to know that what you and I and our friends and our society need is true love. And true love is real and it is radical. It is interesting that one of the most celebrated values of our days is tolerance. Isn't it true? And of course, it's a good and necessary virtue. But you know what? I don't want Anna, my wife, to only tolerate me. And I don't want my friends to only tolerate me. I want them to love me. Jesus did not say, tolerate your neighbor. He clearly thought it was not enough. Indifference and pride can be camouflaged as tolerance or also as political correctness. As the Austrian psychologist Wilhelm Steckel wrote 100 years ago, the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. Jesus did not say, tolerate your neighbor. He said, love your neighbor. In other words, actively seek the best for other people, even your enemies. So Jesus calls for radical love, a love that makes all the difference. This is the love that you and I long for. This love can change our lives, which so many times are marked by traumas and wounds caused by others. Radical love can change our families, our friendships, our universities, and our nations. What could happen if more than seeking to tolerate others, we sought to love others? The third teaching of Jesus I would like to highlight that demonstrates how expanded Jesus' approach to love is and why it can help us diminish the divide or the tension between our longing for love and our experience of lack of love is this: love is spiritual. According to Jesus, love is spiritual. It is real, it is radical, and it is spiritual. Let me show you again his response when asked, what is the most important thing in life, or what is the greatest commandment? Jesus answered, love the Lord your God. In Jesus' view, love is spiritual. Love and God go together. I stole this Lego table from my children, but I'll take it back because I think it helps illustrate Jesus' ethic of love. What happens if I remove one leg from the table? It will be unbalanced, right? The table will not serve its purpose. It will not be the table it was created to be. Well, the same happens with our lives, Jesus seems to say. You may care for your body, exercise, make diets, drink green juice. You may care for your mind, study, complete degrees. You may care for your emotions, seek inner peace, balance, rest, and it is all important. However, according to Jesus, a person will never become who she or he were created to be unless they care for their spirituality. And God, Jesus says, is actually more than one of the legs of the table. God is the top of the table. God is the one who holds it all together in love and in life. The well-being, the connection, the energy, the harmony we are looking for can only be found in a loving relationship with God, Jesus teaches. Have you thought about it? Could our resistance to God be the main reason of the divide between our longing for love and our experience of lack of love in the world today? Now, maybe you are thinking, Elder, it's one thing to speak of God in the first century when everything was explained by divine causes, but to think that there is a God in our days and when science has advanced so much sounds absurd. If this is your opinion, let me at least invite you to consider the following. It is true that we live in a highly technological and scientific society. But interestingly, it is also very open to the transcendent and to the reality of God. Perhaps what I've just said seems contradictory, but that is where we find ourselves as a society, even here in Europe. Let me take a moment to describe this further. Now, with its point of reference in the well-known assertion of the philosopher Nietzsche in the 19th century that God is dead, the secular view, which excludes God from life, preached that scientific progress would create advanced societies in which God and religion would be unnecessary and consequently at least disappear from the public sphere. European thinkers of the 19th century, such as Weber, Marx, and Freud, embraced this view. It was thought that the more scientific progress we had, the more secularized we would be. This way of thinking is known today as the classical theory of secularization. However, and this is very revealing, there seems to be a general agreement among sociologists and philosophers that the classical theory of secularization was incorrect. For example, Peter Berger, who was one of the most renowned sociologists in recent times, openly recognized that the global secularization of the world that he and others of his time advocated was mistaken. The respected Spanish philosopher Diego Bermejo wrote, "The survival of religion in modern societies forces philosophy to rethink the classical theory of secularization." And Victoria Camps, a respected philosopher and professor in Barcelona, confessed the following. "We believed that the celebrated proclamation of the death of God had not been a simple anecdotal occurrence of Nietzsche, but something more profound and accepted with little discussion by postmodern thought, a widely secularized thought. I myself," says Victoria, "dedicated my first book to the theme of the death of God, a whopping 30 years ago. However," she continues, "the assumption that God or religions are not a prominent theme of Western thought has been refuted in recent years by a number of philosophers who return to it and argue among themselves about the importance and interest of recovering it. I will highlight," Professor Victoria says, "among them two of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, John Rawls and Jürgen Habermas." Interesting. We cannot run away from reality. Jesus' view of love is comprehensive, and at the center of it is a love relationship with God. This God, according to Jesus, is a personal loving relationship. Jesus said, I and my Father are one. He also talked about the Spirit, who is not a force, but a divine person. And Jesus taught and lived affirming his oneness with God, the Father and the Spirit, though living as a three persons God. In other words, according to Jesus, God is one, yet a relationship of love. God, therefore, creates everything, not out of need, but out of the abundance of this eternal and perfect divine love. Whoa! It does make a lot of sense then that love is so personal and so vital to our lives. This reality of God agrees and testifies to the reality of our life experiences, doesn't it? One of the first followers of Jesus was John. Him and his brother were known as the sons of thunder. They probably enjoyed a fight. Well, John was so impacted by the life and the message of Jesus that he later became known as the Apostle of Love, because he wrote one of Jesus' biographies and various letters that are also included in the Bible. And he talks often about love. His short letter called First John refers to love around 40 times. And in this letter, he says things like, God is love. And I quote, we love because God loved us first. John surely learned this from the life and the teachings of Jesus. He saw Jesus not only teaching about love, but also personifying love. He saw Jesus touch the untouched, embrace the marginalized, confront corruption, speak on behalf of the voiceless and against false religion, elevate the value of women and children, and all with love. God became a human being and loved. And you know what? You and I are objects of the divine love as well. Philip Yancey, an author I really enjoy reading, rightly said, there is nothing you can do to make God love you more. And there is nothing you can do to make God love you less. I'll never forget something that happened a few years ago. Anna, my wife, was sick that day, so I had to look after our 4 children on my own. I took our 9-month twins in their pushchairs, which looks like a bus, please picture me, and went off to pick up the older 2 children at school. As I arrived, I saw our 3-year-old, but I was told that our 5-year-old, Mateo, was in the bathroom crying. As I went in the bathroom, I find my son crying desperately. He's scared to death about coming out because he accidentally had just wet his trousers. It was heartbreaking to see his desperation and shame. So I told him, let's do this, Mateo. First, Dad will get your hoodie around your bottom so no one will see it's wet on the back. Then I will hold you in my arms and you will have your legs around, embracing me so that nobody will see they are wet. So off we went, and as I got his legs around me, I could just feel the warm urine infiltrating my sweater and shirt. I was holding him with one arm and with the other try to push the huge twins pushchair while making sure I didn't lose the 3-year-old. As I pushed him, and the urine already mixed with my sweat, a thought came to my mind. This is what God does with me. This is how God loves me. This is how God loves us. But what do you mean, Elder? We need to go back to Jesus' view on love to properly understand it. Jesus affirmed, and I quote, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life." Jesus is talking about himself as the God's Son, sent by the God Father as the greatest demonstration of God's love for humanity. Jesus did what he said he would do. He gave his life on a cross for you and for me, just as I loved my son and took his shame, his desperation, his tears, so God in Jesus has done with us in the cross. On the cross, there was a loving exchange no words can describe. He took our sins, that means our lack of love towards God and others, our decision to be gods of our lives, our deliberate choices to love other people or other things more than God. And all this produce guilty, emptiness, shame, and distance from God. And he gave us instead his forgiveness, his life, his salvation, his embrace, his love, and above all, he gave us himself. 3 days after his crucifixion, Jesus rose from the dead. This was so evident that not only John, but thousands upon thousands joined his love movement, though risking their own lives in the process, and experienced a life-changing and supernatural transformation. Friends, we only need to receive this love, which then liberates us to love God back and love others as Jesus said they should be loved. The God who is love liberates us to know what true love is. It liberates us to acknowledge that Jesus, the personification of love, the revolutionary of love, is also the Lord over all. And he and only him is worthy of our loyalty and love. May I ask you to consider receiving his love right now, wherever you are? May I ask you to not to resist the inner voice of God, who may be reminding you that you are not who you say you are, and you are not who others say you are. You are who God says you are. You are loved by God. As Bono of U2, who also sends his greetings, sings in the song Tomorrow, talking about Jesus, open up to the love of he who made the blind to see. Please, let me finish telling you a bit more about the story of the teenage girl who spoke to me about committing suicide, which I mentioned in my introduction. This is what happened. I was finishing a talk at this Christian conference, and at the end, I talked to God in public. I made a prayer. And while praying, something unexpected happened to me. I saw an image, a picture in my mind of a young girl sitting on a closed toilet seat. She had long hair and her head was down, and she had both arms open, and I could see several cuts in her wrists and arms. And while seeing that mental picture, I sensed that God was saying to me, this girl has been cutting herself, but I have not allowed her to kill herself because I love her and I have good plans for her life. Friends, I must confess I was nervous and unsure whether that had really been an experience with God. But I decided to describe this picture once I finished the prayer and said, if you are here, please come talk to me. I went down the stage and immediately a group of girls came forward and left one of them. That girl was shaking so much that it took her a couple of minutes to be able to speak. I'll never forget how she pulled the sleeves, and showed me the several cuts in both her wrists and arms. And then she said, I'm that girl. And she continued saying, I've been cutting myself, and one day I was about to end my life when suddenly I heard a voice saying, stop. I was alone. So I said, God, If that is you, confirm it to me in this conference I will be attending. And that conference was the one I was speaking at. God clearly showed to her what is true to us as well. God knows each one of us and He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. My friends, as I've expressed in this address, I believe Jesus' view on love can help us relieve the tension we find in and around us as we long for love, yet see so much lack of love. This season of pandemic is no different, and it has even highlighted this fact. Jesus' love ethics, as I said before, is relevant to us today because of the historical evidence of its impact and because it is the most expanded view on love we will ever find. It is expanded because Jesus teaches and lives a love that is real, radical, and spiritual. He offers us his love and calls us to love him back and love others. What could happen if you said yes to Jesus? It has changed my life, and I'm sure it can change yours as well. You may want to respond to Jesus right now, or you may want to further explore his life and teachings by reading one of his 4 biographies in the Bible. In any case, I suggest you talk further with a Christian friend or to one of the organizers, and especially talk to God, who is love. Thank you very much for your time and for the privilege of joining you today. Much love to you all.